I call this Traitors Day. Ungrateful colonials. But now I'm an American citizen. You know, I'm half in the mood for hot dogs and hamburgers. So,
well, you know, eventually we just wear you down until you have to join us. You know, it's kind of maybe it's similar to or a metaphor for the diversity visa process. We just beat you down, until you're ready to give up, and then you get your 2NL and then you come in. So,
speaking of which, how are you doing in Preston and Husu in terms of 2NLs? Pretty good results.
Yeah, so I think we had 134 to begin with. I think it was about 26 in Preston, and that was just for those assigned initially to Sydney. We only have one left in Preston, and we have 43 in Husu, and 16 of which, 10 from Addis and 6 from Ghana, and others from consulates that as we know, have chosen not to participate essentially in the process. And so, we're in this, but I'm always, or I have been hopeful that the government would kind of come to us and just say, listen, we've done a good job. This is what happened in February. We fixed everything. They didn't, but let's just give them the benefit. And then, you only have 43 people. Let's just go and go our separate ways. I thought we were close to something like that happening, and then they've backed off. Now, a couple of things that are really important to note in our case is we have deposed Morgan Miles, and unfortunately, it's under a protective order. Yeah. But I have it, and I have the information that how he described the process, and and the government, if they want us to go to quote unquote trial or summary judgment, we're just going to have to do that, and we're happy to do that based on our case. We still feel very strong about our chances, even though, as you know, that they are issuing interview notices and interviewing and scheduling and issuing visas at a much better pace than they had been.
Yeah, exactly. They're also they're responding to DV 2023 questions like that. Normally at this time of year, the normal thing every year is that everyone from the new year, like DV 2023 in this case, has submitted their DS-260 early. Of course, they've screwed it up because they didn't read the instructions. And so they're asking to unlock. And so there's normally like a huge delay that builds up from KCC answering emails, any emails, not just unlocking emails, because they just go through the emails in order that received, right? And so what I'm noticing, though, is that people are getting email responses back in like a couple of days. And unlocking, for example, takes a couple of days, which is, really no big deal. And so that's one piece of evidence that tells me they're working on DV 2023 normally. The other piece of evidence is that people are getting completed DS-260 notices. No one yet has been asked for documents, so that's about the pilot program. It looks like the pilot program could be extended. DS-260s are being processed, and of course, we know in DV 2022, under the pilot program, they turned around and they processed like 70,000 DS-260s in a few months. So Curtis and I are having a sort of an ongoing argument at the moment about unlocking. But in a world where processing DS-260s is fast and normal, which is what it was like prior to DV19, where the document procedure was introduced. In that world where things are being processed fast, you don't have to worry about DS-260 processing anyway, or even reprocessing if you put in, some change that needs reprocessing. So, I think DV 2023 is going to be a more normal year. There will still be those embassies like Ghana and Addis, and you can talk about the shit list or shiz list, but we still have those embassies that are a problem, but at least processing from KCC's perspective They've done an amazing job recently, and the momentum seems to be carrying over to DV 2023. So,
yeah, I think, just to take a step back from that, right? So what's different with 23 versus 22, 21, and 20, and maybe even 19, 18, 17 is we don't have an entry ban. We don't have an administration. We have an administration that is suffering from mismanagement, but not just directly trying to stop. Correct. I mean, I think there are some consulates that, don't get me started on that, but I also think that you also don't have KCC has learned how to manage both litigation and processing, because they always would fall on that sword that say, oh we were getting sued, so we couldn't get to the DS-260s for 2022. I don't know. I think the pilot program actually just is an incredible gift because it makes KCC have the capacity and ability. And you're essentially doing what would you? I mean, I don't want to put a percentage on, but they're doing far less than they ever had to do, right? Because they're not doing the documents retention. They're not doing a lot more.
The document procedure was introduced in late 2018, so it affected 2019. So DV 2018 and before never had DS-260 processing problems. We had backlogs up until about December or January. But come December or January, I was inevitably publishing an article saying, the backlog is over. And I just went back a couple of days ago and I looked at some of those old articles. And what that meant was that you could submit your DS-260 reliably, let's say, on January 1st, and you would know that by the end of January that's been processed. And if your case number was current in February, you would get a February interview because your DS-260 had been processed by the end of January. That's what it's going to be like next year. Now, it was so easy, it was so reliable a process that I was able to tell people, if you want to delay your interview until this date because you're going to college or you've got a wedding or whatever else, submit your DS-260 on this date and you will get an interview in that month, right? You could literally predict it like that, depending on the case number, etc. It was a well-oiled machine, right?
Yeah. And that's the data, makes that point, because if you look at, when they were doing 45 to 50 a year, I mean, it's, that you take a backs up. So they had managed the year appropriately. And so the people could plan for it. The world we had been living in is, different, and it was different. And this year started off different. Then they kind of surged. And then there's these other, rough spots that are going to impact thousands of individuals, unfortunately. But I think when the year closes, we're going to see issuances that are going to be closer to the historical rate than the last 2 years. And, so it's a mixed bag. I mean, and again, everything I say is going to be, and you say actually too, is going to be criticized by some of our clients. But I mean, I would have not predicted at the time that they would have been able to reach at this level.
No.
And that's, and I have to face forward to that. I mean, that's the government's whole argument, really, is that, hey, listen, we're doing great. And then it's my, for the litigation part of it it's like, well, you can't just throw that label on it, even though I just used it myself, because when you drill down, you really are depriving certain people of the opportunities. And so it's a much more granular, consulate by consulate view. And then there's this other issue of, well, how can they take at the same post when everyone's ready? Can they schedule someone who's 30,000, their case number is 30,000, and not take the person who's 20,000? Is that appropriate? We'll see. But that's a post issue, right? That's a consulate issue. That's an order of consideration issue. How do they have to, once they have everyone ready, or AV, or however you want to describe it, do they have to schedule in a certain order, or can they pick and choose?
Yeah.
That's going to be a big issue in our case, I can tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because you've got statements, I'm sure, that say, I mean, because I've seen in the Tesfaye case the ordered lists for Addis and Khartoum. So they're the AV status cases, which is the status where you get an email that says you're current for interview processing. It's not about being current; it's being current for interview processing. That's AV. And at that status, that's where they put you into this order. And in the Tesfaye case, they showed the order of certain cases compared to the overall queue. So the overall queue had 1,430 cases in it or something. And this case, based on its case number alone, was case number 300 or case number 200 or whatever, based only on its case number. Not based on date of completion of processing, not date of submission. Never has been date of submission. And so it's interesting. They've got these ordered queues, but to your point, there's definitely someone in the chat right now feverishly typing, saying, "Yes, but my buddy at Algeria embassy was, we know, Jesse and I both know, we know they're not always following this the stated order." But anyway.
And I've seen that queue too. The difficulty with the queue is there has been, we're talking May, June, July, let's say, when those kind of queues came out in specific cases. The difficulty is they're still processing cases. So they're still moving people into current for interview process. So that's going to change the first number, which is where you stand. And then the second number is also going to change, right? Because if some people are getting interviewed or more people are getting added to the queue. So it's a moving target. And people get really upset.
That's right, isn't it? If you're trying to say you're ordering it by by the order in the queue, and KCC buggered about with processing your DS-260 for the last 6 months, but you're case number 1, shouldn't you go to the head of the queue? That's what it means, right? Even if
that's
it's
my understanding.
Yeah. So it's people can't complain that their order in the queue is moving down, right? Because we're all told, look, you've got a rank number. I had a rank number. It was 31,114 or something, right? Yeah. So EU 2014. And in my year, there was 140,000 selectees, right? So I was seriously worried. And, before I really understood the process, I was worried, just like many people here, that, that I was not going to get my interview because numbers would run out. Because there were 140,000. There's never been more. And then in 2015, there was 125,000, right? So, I get it. I really empathize. I think this is where some people don't sort of understand why I do this or motivations, etc. I empathize because I was a DV case. That's why I'm living in America now. So.
One other point on the confusion part is, people would say, well, how was 31,000 scheduled in April? It's because they were probably maybe either they went out of order or at that specific post, that was the next number.
Correct.
And then people fail to realize that. So I'll get people chirping me or sometimes it happens to be people who want me to help them. And they'll say, well, hey, that happened. And I'm like, yeah, I understand, but we don't have the full facts to say, was that out of order? I do know, my lone Sydneyite, I don't even know if that's the correct word, but my lone plaintiff from Sydney right now is I love him to death. And, we have, for some reason, he has actually a reasonable number. He should have been scheduled. And he's processed and everything's ready. So it's an imperfect system. And that's really the takeaway, right? I think people, I can't tell you how many plaintiffs I have. And I've one of them, I guess it's the best things that happened this year for me in taking this case and only taking 134 people. And one of the worst cases, I've had so many people literally at their wit's end, and then they get to 2-L, and they're like, "Oh, I'll take all those things I said that were nasty. I'm taking them back." And I'm like, but it's they were so frustrated about living in the system and not acknowledging that we have a broken system. Let's just start from there,
Sure.
and then deal with it.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I've even been criticized for saying what I'm about to say. I've said credit where credit is due, right? KCC, they finally recognized after being sued and sued and sued and looking at more lawsuits in the eyes, they finally recognized they've got to do more. They changed the system December 9th. They've really put effort in. I think they've increased hiring tremendously. I know they were up to 42 staff members a few months ago. I don't know how many they have right now, but they did what they had to do. What they didn't do was they didn't impose the will, and fairness on those embassies that just stubbornly refused to do the job. Ghana, Addis, Addis with 1,400 people in the queue, 1,400 cases, nearly 3,000 people in the queue, and they're still, they're maybe doing, I mean, if we're lucky, we're going to see 20, 30 interviews.
I have multiple plaintiffs whose case numbers are AF 2,500 to 5,000.
Yeah.
From Addis. It breaks my heart because,
unfair.
You always get either I've saved people's lives or I've ruined them, and there's no in between, and that's the nature of the game that I choose to play and help people with. That's fine. I don't really care about that. I mean, the best though. I mean, speaking,
I know you care, but you just got broad shoulders.
It's okay. I mean, whatever. I mean, life's going to go on. Whether that's the same thing where when people say, "Well, how can you tell that litigation has had any impact?" And I try to tell people, I'm like, well, I don't lose sleep over that issue. I don't care because I care about one thing. Like right now, like if people get a 2-L and I don't need to go and test whether it was because of our lawsuit or whether it just happened, because the reality is the mission was I have to get 134 interviews.
Yeah.
The mission is not, I want a statue built in front of the KCC of like my name. Like, I don't care. So people are like, do you think it was because of what you did? I'm like, I don't care. Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very obvious that the December 9th thing was because enough lawsuits had already happened at that point. But the pedal to the metal, the incredible effort they've put in, that is a good faith effort, right? I mean, I've heard that many, many times. You can't say they have not used a good faith effort from a KCC centralized processing point of view. You can complain legitimately about an embassy.
Yeah, and in our February complaint, I'm not saying this is the reason for it, but I mean, I think they may have looked at it the same way. So this year they were going to do, and in fact, all their publicly facing cables said, we're going to try to get back to pre-pandemic processing of immigrant visas and non-immigrant visas, right? And we pointed out in our complaint that's great, go for it. But historically, you've always done 9% of all immigrant visas for diversity visas, which puts you at 45 to 50, and you're at like 1%. Right. And they, I don't know if they read it and said, oh boy, that looks awful, and that will look awful to a judge. But at the end of the day, strategy, just they were going to do it anyway. We don't know, but that was always a good way for me to track how they were doing. And right now, I think they've probably come within that historical range.
Yeah, they are. They're within the historical range. Curtis's range is increased his range. He was saying 3 or 4 weeks ago that they were only going to issue 25,000 visas. He's now saying they're going to issue 30,000 visas. It's very, very clear. They've got 58,000 people scheduled. There's AOS on top of that. It's nearly 60,000 people. Of course, that doesn't mean that they can issue all 55,000 because of the number of refused cases, no-shows, AP that won't complete, etc. But I put money on it that we're going to exceed, 100% money on 45,000. I think we're going to exceed 45. we might hit 50,000.
And that takes, yeah, and that takes you to that 8 to 9%. I mean, comparing on what the numbers come out with IV processing, which I know have been impacted, but pretty good. One thing I'll tell you on AOS, and that's adjustment of status. That's for people who are here, who are current for, and they can apply while they remain in the United States. I've had, I don't know, I can't think of the number right now, but all of the clients that we've had and dealt with, USCIS has been pretty good. I mean, we know, right? They usually expedite. But as inundated as they are with everything, and much of my work is actually non-DV, and I actually DV is a small part of my life. It's actually God, it takes up the most time, but a small part of my life. USCIS, actually, I'll give them credit. They treat DV different. Whoever runs that DV AOS office knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. It's always been that way. And I went through AOS, and I was worried about it because I saw the typical 8 to 9 months of processing time nonsense. But that's not what happens in DV world, and it never has been. It's always been fast. It appears to be at the local field office level, because centrally they don't really sort of do a lot. And there's no expedited process for DV or AOS. But unofficially, is very clearly every case is expedited in AOS.
Yeah, I can tell you that people would beg, non-DV people would beg for 8 to 9 months, because right now they're tracking, and just let's back up from DV for a second. Let me give you another real world example, right? So at the end of the fiscal year deadline, last year they actually wasted 67,000 immigrant visas that could have been used for people in the employment-based context, because of it's a complicated system. But let's just say they had 70,000 visas, and why that matters is for people who are subject to country caps, like Indian nationals or Chinese nationals. If they don't use them, those people who've been waiting for a decade for a visa, they lose out, and their numbers can actually retrogress. So, yeah, I mean, right now people would beg for 8 to 9 months. 8 to 9 months. I mean, people are at like 20 to 25, and they're staring down the barrel of this coming October 1 date. And so there are problems everywhere. I mean, that's the other thing that diversity visa applicants need to know is whether you're in the United States or you're outside the United States, everyone is mad at the consulate. And that's why sometimes they're a little tone deaf, because everyone's screaming at them.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay, let's take a couple of questions. We're going to have 2020. In fact, I'm just seeing one, so I'm going to put that up there. 2020 and 2021. So let's just briefly point out the appeals process for all these cases is in September. Is that right?
Yeah, we're going to argue it September 16th in DC, probably in person. I don't know who from our team will be arguing, but I'll raise my hand and always volunteer, but I don't know. And then our cases and argument are consolidated with the 21 cases and those in 20 as well. So it's going to be an important case. Again, I could see this making its way up to the Supreme Court, who are now made themselves more famous in the last couple of weeks. But, this is, and what people need to understand is the issues really in this case about reservation of visas go way beyond diversity visas. And it actually is a kind of an issue for the Supreme Court. Can a federal judge step in and take visas from 1 year and hold them because of the bad actions of an administrative agency? It's a really, really interesting issue. But for all intents and purposes, we'll argue in September. The judges can take as long as they want with a decision, maybe 3 months, maybe 6, maybe longer. And hopefully if we prevail and the government doesn't want to fight us any longer, we can get the relief that people have been waiting for.
Right. So for Miranda and the other people that are asking about 2020 and 2021 cases, you have to be prepared for a long wait. There's appeals in September, and Jesse's just said the answer could be several months after that, right? So you have to just be prepared for that, okay? and obviously that means that there will be a resetting of the time in which they have to allocate those visas, right?
Yeah. And I will say, it's, we always talk about litigation and all that stuff, but we also have this branch of function. Now we're July 4th, and we're celebrating here today. One other thing we have is this thing called the Congress, who actually should make laws, and they could actually solve this with like a bill. You send a bill and then it goes to the president. We still have one of those, I think. And they could recapture all the visas that were lost for those who are actually subject to the travel bans all the way up till now.
Yeah.
And they could do that, except they don't do anything except point fingers. And so as much as my life involves the judiciary branch, there are these other two branches that could actually solve the problem for all of you and maybe for me, who have to go to the courts for relief.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to quickly say hi to Luca. Luca's been hanging around here for a couple of years now. He's one of the people waiting for the answers in the 2020 and 21 cases. So let's see. I just saw an interesting question. So I've had a label up saying hold your questions. Now I'm going to start to take questions. So people can repeat their questions, and I'll try and catch some of these things. DS 5535s in Joburg. It's not just Joburg, but there are several embassies that are using these 5535s. To me, that's one reason to make sure your DS 260 is fully completed, like with the social media stuff and the travel history and the address history, because I get that they're probably putting out 5535s kind of randomly or perhaps even with malintent. But if they're looking at a DS260 that is fully completed with full education, full travel, full address history, full social media history, etc., and they pull out another form that's the same questions, then that's pretty bad. So to me, that's why you put time into making sure your DS260 is right.
Yeah, I think they're doing it a little bit more like when you used to fly, in the US, they'd put you aside and it'd be like totally random, like your family members would go through and then you'd get stopped and there was no rhyme or reason for it. They just had to do it or whatever. They had to get to like the quota level or whatever. I think it's something like that, but it's bad for the post, number one, because it creates work for them so they could be doing other things like scheduling interviews. It also is bad for those who've waited so long. They go and now they're put in administrative processing. I think, the more interest I've seen about administrative processing is an important point to stop on for 1 second, because number one, you need to know if you're still in admin processing and it's 9/30, like September 30th, you're not in admin processing anymore. You're actually done. You cannot stay in AP and get a visa if you're a diversity visa applicant after the fiscal year deadline. And I know a lot of people say, well, what can I do? Listen, you can file for an administrative, processing. You can say, listen, this is ridiculous. You're actually just freezing me out. You can actually file a lawsuit over that. And I know many people do. I've tried not to wade into the diversity visa AP space. Takes an extreme amount of work in a short period of time. But I hope that they really get to. I know you have thoughts on that how they'll spend their time in August and September with people who are in AP.
Yeah, exactly. They tend to. So September interviews tend to be less than August because in August and September they're trying to close out the AP cases. So there's about 6,000 cases currently in AP. I think it is 5,700 or something. Zarthisius's website is better for finding that number.
I will say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so that what does that mean? That means that you have to make kind of a call if you're in AP. I do think for certain, I don't want to say disfavored, but I will say it. Like if you're an Iranian in AP or some who have been flagged from the Middle East and you're in AP, you may have to go to federal court to preserve your chance for the visa, because they will leave people there forever. Like,
For sure.
and so it's different. I think for those in, like, if you're confident that it's just you've been randomly chosen and you have a post that may actually communicate with you, work that, and then submit the 5535. But if you're, in a country that's known, or a post that's known to look, Iranian nationals in Kara, like that to me is the paradigm. If you're somewhere like that, you may have to explore the litigation option, because they'll leave you there.
Oh, for sure. That's interesting, because for many years, actually, Jesse, I would tell people, if you're Iranian and they're offering you an interview in August and September, you're probably not going to get your visa, right? Because you're going to go into AP, particularly if you're an Iranian male, you're going to go into AP, and that AP, they won't shorten it for any reason. And whilst they will clear up other AP cases in August and September, they're not going to do yours, because it takes 4 or 5 months to process an Iranian AP case typically. So people can choose whether they want to risk the interview or not, but it's certainly a risk. Okay. I want to ask this question. Clevy, you've repeated this. Please don't repeat questions. I see it. I choose the questions I want to answer, but this is an interesting one. So this is someone who's a DV selectee. They're going to come to the USA and they want to sponsor a family member. Now, obviously, if they're sponsoring a brother or something like that, that's going to take 15 years. But when can they file an I-130 is an interesting question. Because presumably they need to establish themselves as a resident in the USA. They have to be working, because they're going to have to give an I-864 to a company, an I-130 process. They'll be the responsible financial person. So it will take a time. You can't just turn up on day one and file your 130, right?
Well, I would say so for an I-130, the basis of that is strictly on the family relationship. They're not going to look at the financial stability of the petitioner. So you could actually file the I-130 as soon as you get your green card. And so it's just a matter of knowing if the person is going to consular process, meaning they're outside the United States, and that after the I-130 is approved and the process goes through USCIS, right? It doesn't go through state, it goes to USCIS, and they're just looking at the bona fides of the relationship. So if it's your spouse, they're looking, is this a bona fide marriage? If it's your mother, it's going to be, do you have a birth certificate that shows that, that family relationship? When you actually go to process the visa, right, you want to get that person into queue. You're exactly right, though. You have to establish that you're going to sponsor them, or that they can sponsor. That's when kind of you hit that, I guess, the DS-260 stage, except, for consular processing, where you have to submit the documents. But the I-130 should be filed. I tell people all the time, if you have a brother or sister, as soon as you become a green card holder, throw it in. It's $535, but you never know when, right. It seems like it's throwing away money, but you never know when the queues will become shrunken. Maybe Congress will get his act together. But yeah, no, as soon as you're a green card holder, you can do it. And I know plenty of people who do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. My brother got a green card through the green card lottery in the early 90s, mid 90s, which was almost like, I think it might have been the first lottery, and it was before it was even called diversity visa. And if he'd have sponsored me then, it would have been faster, right, than my 2014 process, which is when I actually eventually got the green card. But at the time, we were like, no, it seems like it'll be a very, very long time. Forget it, And I was able to get H-1 visas, etc. So
what stinks, I mean, I don't know if it stinks. It's just a reality, right? It's if you have a unmarried, even a married son, you're talking and you're here now, and you want to bring your adult children over. Those are 21 and older. It's 8 years. I mean, it's around 8, could be longer. So if you have any intentions of doing it, you come here on a diversity visa and you get your green card and you're going to establish your life here, throw in that I-130, get it in for your children,
Yep. Okay. Quick message of thanks. A successful candidate in Ireland, June 9th in Dublin. Nice.
That was a good, people who, I will say there are some really savvy transfer people out there, because that's not my game, but and people, I always just tell people, listen, if you know more about where you can go than I would, but just make sure you're honest. But I gotta give credit back to people, because they navigated that option well as well.
That's another reason for people to complain, because KCC centrally have been saying to people that you can't move your consulate. I mean, if you're in AV status, they won't do anything with your process. But they've been telling people, no, unless you're a resident in this country, you can't move your consulate. And then some consulates have allowed that, and at times KCC have allowed that too. They've said, okay, we'll change your consulate, but then you need to unlock your DS-260 and update your address, which means they believe that you've moved. Now, that's probably because you've made a full statement to them saying, I've moved to Rio and I want to be interviewed in Rio, but you haven't moved to Rio. Well, if you've done that and you've lied, that's not a great way to move forward, frankly. But but people have done that. But you've got to be very careful.
It shows again what we have is, everyone likes to use the word fair, and we don't have a fair system. So let's just start from that. And if you look at let's look at what happened with Sydney for all our plaintiffs and others. They essentially just said, hey, if you want to skip over here, we'll do it. There was no be a resident. There was just come over. And the EU has been pretty generous with allowing people within Schengen and others to come over at low capacity posts. Africa, I mean, you have to give up one of your children to transfer.
Right.
And so exactly. they have this disparate treatment of people. Yeah. I don't want to use the other word, D word, but I mean, it really is a system that they treat different regions differently. They just do.
Yeah. Oh, and there's always been that case. In some African countries, there's an organization, IOM, that control the process with such strength that people. So, for example, in most embassies, you can actually choose to attend your interview without having your medical done. It's not a good idea, but in some cases, people have done it, right, for various reasons. I'm not suggesting anyone tries to do that, but it can be done. Whereas if you are in some of these African countries where IOM actually control the thing, they'll literally cancel your interview appointment if you won't do your medical in time. They've got that much power. It's crazy. It shouldn't be like that. So, okay, any news about the documentation procedure for DV 2023? Quick thing on that. I've not heard a single person ask for documents yet. The emails that I've seen being sent out saying your DS-260 is fully processed is the version of the email that says you will, if you haven't been contacted already, you will soon be contacted about how to proceed, which is a hint that they're going to send you a document request, but it's not the document request. And so far, I've not seen any documents being requested in DV 2023, which is beginning to suggest that the pilot program is continuing. I certainly hope so. Okay, let's see. Husband and I were selected DV 2023 with different case numbers and different eligibility countries as he applied through Africa, while mine through Asia. I want to ask, do we have to fill in two? I mean, it's perfectly okay, right, Jesse, to fill in two. I would submit both the DS-260s, but my personal opinion would be, number one, make sure you both qualify, right? That you both meet the education requirements, that you haven't made any mistakes, you haven't lied or anything else. As long as both of you are in that situation, that's first thing. Second thing, then you start looking at your case number, and you tend to focus on that earlier, lower case number. But But any other thoughts on that, or is that?
I would just say, you pursue both options until you reach your goal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to know what posts you're at, and that'd go a long way. I mean, that's the world we're living in now, is you have to take the posts, but I wouldn't stop. I would be pursuing both options, and then once you get, even if you got a 2-L, I may just say, like, listen, I'm going to go and keep pushing. I'm not, ultimately you have to go all the way to the finish line, meaning you have to get issued a visa and the passport and come to the United States. Until that happens, you can't rest.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Another happy Independence Day and a happy story there. Someone who's been approved. That's awesome. Question here from Brian saying there's n number of people, 4,100 selectees in Morocco, and they've scheduled 1689. Not all of the selectees in Morocco would be living in Morocco still, but it's possible. And not all of them would have wanted to proceed. So there's probably not 2,400 cases waiting for the 2NL. But I don't have the exact number on there. I don't know if you have any sort of numbers or idea on Morocco.
The only thing I know, I don't look at it too closely, other than I know that they've been one of the better posts. And I may have one plaintiff still. I don't know, but I don't know, this whole question to me is something I get all the time when people want to take what's happened and project. Right. And I guess that's my first thought. My first thought is you can't assume the future is going to look like the past. At Post, we just saw KDU schedule 900 people, and no one. If I had said they're going to schedule 900 people to the people who I had left of my plaintiffs, they would have thought I was crazy, right?
Right.
So I can't, because they hadn't done anything for a while.
Right.
And so we can't. I would advise everyone who wants to do this and live in this DV world where it makes you kind of go a little crazy. Don't assume the future is going to look like the past, right?
Right, exactly. Okay, I'm sorry to labor this thing again. This argument. I want to just make sort of points.
I feel like I need to have that gif where I'm watching, eating the popcorn, because I'm watching it, but I'm not going to get involved, because honestly, I don't know. Like, I feel like sometimes I just, I have to admit things like I don't know. I'm in the background.
Well done, Mr. Lawyer, for saying I don't know.
I don't.
No, exactly. So okay. So you might defer to someone who's been doing it for a few years, and here's my point of view. There's 3 points I would make. In DV 2022, it's too late to be talking about unlocking. So when we're talking about unlocking, we're talking about DV 2023 and onwards, right? And I would say two things. Number one, as I explained before, it's very clear that that processing is working better in DV 2023, and it has been in DV 2022 as well. And so there isn't going to be a delay situation with DS260s. So firstly, the idea that you're going to be delayed because of DS260 processing is thinking based around someone who's only seen 2020, 2021, and 2022 processing. But for someone like me, who's been around 10 years, I've seen normal processing, and I know how that works, and I've documented it, right? So what we're about to do is we're going to return to normal processing, and that means that they'll be able to process everybody's cases, and they could even process everybody's cases twice if they wanted to. So is there going to be delays? Well, no, systemically there won't be delays for DS260. We're not going to have the arguments of the problems that we've had in the past of waiting for DS260 processing. The flip side also is that if you've got mistakes in your DS260, some of those mistakes are serious. And if you need to add, for example, a derivative like a child or a spouse or whatever else, don't, for God's sake, take this daft advice of not unlocking your DS260 and delaying, because you don't want to turn up to an interview in September with your spouse and additional child that were not included, and you find that you don't have a visa number for them. or you don't want to turn up to an interview in May with your Iranian husband who's not been background checked, and you just married him, and now you've got to go through background checks, which means they're going to question the whole case. So or you've documented yourself into a mistake because you spelt your name wrong in the DS-260 and you didn't correct it, and now the background checks that they've done on your name are wrong. And so the CO can either approve you knowing that your background check was probably done incorrectly, or they can say, well, no, you should have corrected your name earlier so that the background check was done right. In the old days, prior to the document procedure and prior to the backlogs, me and there's a user called Someone's Mum, who's the lady that does the AOS thing, and Susie Q. There's sort of three sort of famous people in the DV world that have been giving advice since 2013, right? And I got a message from Someone's Mum the other day saying thank you, for the article I published about please do unlock, because the standard advice that we always used to give prior to this last 3 years of chaos was, for any reason, unlock your DS-260 and have it, and it probably won't cause delay. But even if it did cause delay, a delay is better than denial. And so I said that, and then Raphael came out and said, a delay is denial. Well, no, Raphael, it isn't, because you don't understand what a normal year is like, right? Yeah. So that's my long-winded but tried to be short answer to this question.
I'm going to stay in the audience on that, but I will say I'm old enough to remember earlier this year when people thought they could trigger a 2NL if they did unlock. And I had people were like, should I unlock so I get an interview notice? And I'm like, what?
I didn't hear that one.
I had people who were convinced that they got the interview notice because they unlocked, so that KCC, it's about like turning eyes to you, right? So that I unlocked, and all of a sudden I got my interview notice, and so then you had that kind of rumor flowing around. Yeah, I'm.
That's a dark rumor. On the converse side of that, I've seen now a couple of cases where DV 2023 cases where people have unlocked and been told that their DS-260 is processed after that. So they submitted May 8th or whatever, they unlocked June 5th or whatever, and then by the end of June they were told you're fully processed. So it's not true that delays are caused.
And again, it goes back to any time. I mean, people, if this is their first time with the U.S. immigration system, one of the ways you can kill your future, whether it's DV or your future ability to enter the United States, is by being dishonest. I mean, they're just not going to forgive it. They just don't. I think that's the best advice. The best advice is this: don't leave something that is dishonest or wrong or could subject you to kind of a doubt about who you are, your credibility, who your family members are. That's dangerous. Whether that means you have to unlock or not for 23, I don't know.
We'll see.
I would never want to walk into an interview if I knew something was wrong on my application.
Yeah. My prediction, though, is that we will see absolutely no backlog of DS-260 processing by about December or January. Which will be a different situation. Okay.
Can I say for the record? I fully do not want. I'm not litigating DV 2023. Like I don't think there's gonna. I pray. Everyone thinks that I want, I love lit. I don't. I didn't even want to do it this year, and I don't want to do it next year. I'm hopeful that the administration has made enough positive changes to understand that, how they can get to everyone. And I think outside of, how do they deal with bad behavior at certain posts? That's the one issue that's out there. And that's, I think they haven't solved it yet.
And just talking about bad posts, Caro, they've done something recently, thank goodness, but it's not enough. It's too little, too late. They were always on the shiz list for a good reason.
Let's back up. How did we get here? So what happened was, what was different in 20 and 21, well, in 20, you had the president shut it down. In 21, 20 to 21, it bled over a little bit. You had the State Department essentially centralize it and shut it down. They came up with a prioritization schedule. In 22, they actually now it's the consulates who have the discretion, right? And I know there's a disagreement about that. My position is it was consulates. Here's our guidelines. We really like non-immigrant visas this year. Hint, hint. Do some DV maybe if you feel like it, and do your immediate relatives and your K fiancés. Okay, go for it. And I think they really did push it off to certain posts and say, hey, do whatever you feel like. And certain posts did really well, and certain posts did nothing. And that's the reality. That's 2022 in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, couple of quick questions. Easy one there. DV winners if they use any affidavit of support at all. If they do, they need to use the I-134. The I-864 is not approved for DV cases. Here's a heartbreaking message here. Ukrainian family, the men cannot leave the country at the moment for obvious reasons, and the interview must be in D. What should I do? So, I mean, if the spouse is the winner, if the female is the winner, then I would say go ahead and do your interview, and later you can sponsor your husband when he's able to leave the country. It's going to be a difficult road ahead for sure, and I'm sorry you're going through that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that? I mean, there's been some good things with TPS recently and that sort of thing, but is there any other help for Ukrainians?
I mean, if the Ukrainian government is the one holding them up, there's the benefits that the U.S. system has allowed are not going to be helpful. I would try to say, I don't want to say sneak out or abscond, but I've had clients from Ukraine who happened to be who left, were able to leave. I don't know how, and they've interviewed and they'll be in the U.S. If they're not here already, and they were DV winners for 2022. I don't know I'm not an expert in how Ukrainian men can get out, so I'm not going to weigh in on that. But it's difficult.
I'm sure that's tough. That's very tough. Although I have to say, I mean, obviously we've all been talking about Ukraine recently. There have been some really horrible, terrible situations in Africa, country wars, inter-country, and intra-country wars, etc. There's been some terrible things going on, tribal wars, etc. It doesn't get the same headlines, unfortunately, as as it should, frankly. But anyway,
well, in the way, unfortunately, I don't want to pick on the State Department about doing this, but I will for a second. They treat it like, when I talk to them, and so they'll say, well, how are we supposed to get to X, Y, and Z because of all the stuff that's going on in the country? And I always tell them that's exactly why you have to do it. If your consulate is open, if the U.S. it's part of our government, and these people, if you don't get to them, they're going to suffer. So why wouldn't you accelerate?
Yeah,
like, it's, what I'm saying? They look at the country conditions surrounding them as a reason to slow down, and I say, well, no. It's a reason for it to speed up. And unfortunately, they have done tremendous work at helping Ukrainians, right? So it shows, but that tells me, and I'm not being choosy, right? I think it's great, but it shows me the difference between how they treated the Ukrainian situation, but all the different civil stripes that you're talking about. Like, what about the Afghan humanitarian parole system? That was awful. Like, we didn't get anyone out. We're still not getting anyone out. And then you look at a lot of the African regions where we just let them die on the vine.
Yeah.
Right. So it goes to this fairness issue. Like, everyone's like, well, isn't that unfair? Yeah. Well, that's where we start from. That's where our immigration system starts from. Unfair.
Yeah, absolutely. More happy news there from Angel. Congratulations to Angel.
Hey, that's one of mine.
Oh, really? Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well done. Okay, so 2023 winner, SA 500, waiting for KC contact, expecting the long or short process. I think things are going to be better in DV 2023. Call me naive if you want, but I think things are going to be better. I don't think you're going to have to brush off your litigation hat again for DVs in 2023.
If I have to litigate SA 500, I'm going to have to hire four more people because there's no way it's not happening.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine, Fausto. You'll be fine.
Yeah. This one's an answer I know, but perhaps you could answer it. Does the DV stamp issued by the consulate allow for multiple entries? Wondering if I should get the physical green card.
Well, it does. So if you have a 551 stamp in there, you're fine. You can go. But I tell people, like, here's the difficulty with this, and this is what you have to understand. When you sign up for DV and you sign up for that, you're signing up for permanent residency.
Yeah.
If you come in and leave and you're gone for the next 6 months, they can take it.
Well, okay, I'll push back on you a little bit there. So firstly, the absence thing is better under 6 months because you're not actually applying for readmission, right? In a sense, right? And then 6 to 12 months is technically possible. And over 12 months becomes more challenging and you need a re-entry permit. And then over 2 years becomes very difficult. And we're talking SB1s at that point and all that sort of thing. But I have to say that, having dealt with a lot of DV immigrants over the time, it's very normal and accepted by Border Patrol officers that first absence after entering to activate your visa, it's possible that it might take you nearly a year to clean up loose ends, sell your house, sell your car, right? So I'm not suggesting that people should be absent more than they should be in there. I absolutely agree with your point. This is not a visitor's visa. This is to live and work in America, right? That's why you're getting a green card. But that first absence is acceptable. I tell people often ask me, how long do I have to be in America after the activation? I say about 5 minutes. You can get on the next plane out of there if you want, but you have to obviously understand that you shouldn't abuse that privilege of being absent. You're on probation for the first 5 years until you get citizenship, and you have to be aware of that.
No, that's a good point. I didn't mean to tell people they can't leave. So that I agree with you on that. I think the more important point is, and I don't know why I've seen this happen, is people don't think they have. Your visa is only able to be used, I guess is a better word, for 6 months. Or check the date. You actually do have to come the first time. I've had people not come. I've had people who get the DV visa and they wait, and then the visa expires. So you do have to come at least once. And the principal has to go first. You can't send the derivatives ahead of you. Right. And no, you can come in and leave, and you don't need the physical card. Although you better make sure you know where it's going and who's opening the mail. You don't want to lose it. But I mean, sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So. Yeah, good point. Don't leave your trip until the last few days before your visa expires as well, because you only need a plane trip to be cancelled, and that's it. You're done. Get here before the visa expires, and the visa will expire at the latest 6 months after the medical date, sometimes earlier than that. So you need to check that visa expiry date. Once you've entered and you've activated your residency, your visa is stamped, it's endorsed, and it says this is, good for up to 12 months. Then you've got 12 months in which that visa, the endorsement, is your proof of residency. And that's what covers you until you get your plastic green card. So there you go, Dean. From Argentina, bienvenido. I got family in Argentina, so I always like these ones from Argentina. Still waiting. My cases at MVC sent 1807, 18th of July. What happened in BNS THARP? Not scheduled. BNS Buenos Aires. Okay, they're not scheduling more interviews. Yeah, I don't know. I hope they do some for September.
His case is definitely not at the NVC, but
it's not.
I guess the most I would ask him what number he was at, but it shouldn't matter in Buenos Aires. It's just a matter of maybe them accepting it.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. It should be okay. When he says he's at MVC, he really means he's not scheduled. The CX status says at MVC, but it just means he hasn't been scheduled.
They really should do a better job at saying that.
But I get it. It's the same as the DS260. The DS260 is used in 100% of immigration cases, which is 1 million cases a year, and DV is 50,000. So for 5%, are they going to make changes on the CX system or the DS260? No, they don't make it specific.
Do you know the NVC is like 30 minutes from my house?
Is it really?
Yeah, it's in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I'm tucked away by the coast in Massachusetts by the border. So, yeah.
Okay, got time for like 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll have to call it a day. I think probably.
Yeah.
I've got hamburgers to go and make.
God bless you.
Yeah. Okay, just a generic one here, and completely new to DV and visas, and trying to apply this October. Any tips or advice for someone like me? Well, firstly, apply. Right? There's no harm in applying. Don't use anyone to help you, fill in the form, because it's a very simple 14-question form or something. I mean, it's just very easy. It's not a plan; it's a lottery, right? So you fill in your entry in the October period, and you hope to win, but you may not win, and you probably won't win. The chances of selection are about 1 in 100 years. Once every 100 years. That's what I tell people. So, the people that win are very lucky. So, it's not a plan you make, but just enter. And then, everything else goes from there. Let's finish. I don't know. I want to finish on Adis, but.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's.
Why the embassy is working below its capacity. Yet they issued, they just made a decision, right? Again, this is another argument. I've been arguing with Curtis a lot just recently. I don't know what's going on with Curtis, but I'm dare to say if I post on Twitter right now, "Happy 4th of July," he would probably say, "No, it isn't." I mean, he's arguing every bloody thing at the moment. But anyway,
let me comment on, like, this is the Telegram. I've tried to make this point to my wife, who again, she's the best, but that's not the point. The point is this: when you talk to people over text, Telegram, Twitter, WhatsApp, it's like when you're driving a car and someone cuts you off and you like throw up the middle finger, or you just raise your finger. You'd never do that in person. You'd never do that in person. No. And so, like, I feel like we live in this world where it's so easy, and sharp disagreements look all the more sharper, and people have knives out. Maybe you need to have him on for a coffee chat or something. Maybe you need to.
Yeah, I've had him on in the past.
I know. Maybe you need to kick. Yeah. Maybe we're too friendly. But I do think. The problem with the Ds is this: it goes to consulates have the power. They put one person, I believe, scheduling DV. I don't know what happened in the last 3 months. I can tell you, like, I'll give Curtis a bone, and I respect Curtis. I mean, he's out here doing what he can. The reality is he's brought a lawsuit targeting this embassy. I have 10 plaintiffs left who are from this embassy. And the reality is a judge is going to have to decide in each of these cases. I think maybe, I don't know how many there are, but they're going to have to reach multiple decisions about, is it appropriate to select this many people and do nothing with that? I mean, I would say at the very least, they should just say, we're not doing it. So don't even get your hopes up, because that's also a decision, right? And they could say that. What they can't do, I don't believe they can't actually select 1,500 people or whatever and do 100. No, they can't. I don't believe that's rational. The other thing is they need to, if they're going to adopt this type of policy, they need to disclose it. I just don't think they can keep it, because the difficulty is this: people live through enough uncertainty where you could actually just tell them you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Tell them.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this: it's not.
Defend your
It's
position. Yeah.
yeah, but the other thing is, people are like, what can I do? Unfortunately, the difficult answer is not a whole heck of a lot, right?
Right.
You want to have a protest in front of the consulate. I've heard that. You wanted me to retweet. So I'd have tweeted things. I do it more for my own. Why not? Little harm, right? It's my little knife throwing. And I think you just maybe if you're in my lawsuit, I pray to God I can win for you, and if not, Curtis and his team can go win. I mean, the reality is though, the why is really a matter for state to explain to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think the question has been asked about when the last interviews will be scheduled. The last interviews for September will be scheduled at probably around about the end of July, maybe early August. But the lawsuits that you guys have for those embassies might actually cause a few more scheduled interviews in those embassies. If you and Curtis are successful, particularly in Addis and other embassies. But it's going to be for your plaintiffs.
And it really is hard. I mean, it's funny because this is the difficulty. This is like, let me give you a little litigation thing, because everyone says it's the lawyers. It's really not. The lawyer controls the arguments and making sure that your voice is heard. But
Right.
Federal judges in the United States, as we just saw, have tremendous power, right? They just overturned Roe v. Wade, the whole abortion thing, right? So we give these federal judges in our country, right? We give them the liberty. We're talking about 4th of July. We give them the liberty to actually do, so they can do a lot, and they can do good and they can do bad. So if a federal judge in Kentucky, in our case, looked at this and said, you know what? I can't figure out why you would ignore these people. They have such low numbers. They did everything right. And you're saying what? Like you can't treat people this way. And if that were to happen, the judge could also say, you know what? I don't feel like getting involved in this. It's
Right.
a matter between you and the State Department. Their blood's on their hands, so to speak.
Right.
So, again, I think it goes this theme is, and to the last person, should I do this? Should I enter? You should enter, but you should enter knowing that it is a unforgiving, anxious, stressful process if you even win. And I think people like, well, why is this so hard? You know why? Because you're getting a green card, and that's hard. And if you can't manage your stress, don't play.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
And always send your angry texts or WhatsApp chats or comments on Telegram only to Simon and Curtis. Don't send them to me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just the guy who's sitting in the back. I'm just the other lawyer, right? I'm supposed to be anonymous.
The other lawyer. That's right. I love that.
I love it.
Oh, dear.
That's who I want to be.
Any final thoughts?
My final thoughts are this. I mean, it's the same thing I've been telling people when we started doing this way back. It's that we live in an imperfect system. Today is actually the Declaration. It's Independence Day in the United States, and what we all want is a little independence and a little freedom to choose, how to live our lives. And I think the first thing I would tell people is if you're not independent and feel the liberty within yourself, if you can't manage your own consciousness and you just can't deal and you have to treat people inappropriately or angrily and you think that sending in a nasty message is appropriate, you're not going to be able to really get out what this country will allow you to. So don't do it. Really understand what you're signing up for. Which is, it's the freedom to do these chats and then go cook burgers and love the people you with, knowing that life is imperfect, but we have the freedom to bitch and moan about it.
Yeah, exactly. Wise words. So, you're wise beyond your years. That's for sure.
I'm not. I'm getting older. I'm telling you. I was just last thing. I spent like the last 2 days at the baseball fields with my son, and it's that's the freedom I would love. I mean, I'd like nothing more to do that. I wish I could bottle up the time and never do it. But I woke up this morning and I'm like, my feet are killing me because I'm walking around these baseball fields and I'm like, and I try to stay active, but I'm like, God, am I old? I honestly, I don't know. That's my last two. I need the freedom to find really good running shoes. That's what I need.
Yeah. No, I can relate. I woke up this morning. I couldn't move my arms. I was mulching in the yard yesterday, the front and back yards, and we put 70 bags of mulch in there. It's barely touched it. I've got a pretty big yard, so
you must be dying, because I tell you, it's anytime you do something that you don't normally do. I went bowling once for like the first time in a decade, and I couldn't walk for like 4 days. Right. And I don't know, bowling, but like that landscaping will kill you.
How people that do that work, how they do it, it's beyond me.
I know. I did it when I was a kiddo. That's how I actually I bought my first car, and I actually had some money to go to college back in the day. I landscaped. I used to do like 12-hour days. If I did that now, I wouldn't come home. I would be it.
Yeah, just broken back.
Well, I hope everyone enjoys a little independence. Be good.
Yeah, you too.
Keep it peaceful out there.
Yeah, keep it peaceful. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.